In this example, we're going to look at multiplying and dividing signed decimals. So thus far, all of the decimals that we've multiplied and divided have been positive, but the same rules that apply to multiplying and dividing integers also apply to multiplying and dividing signed decimals. A summary of these rules is below. So basically, to multiply or divide two signed numbers, you multiply or divide the absolute values, so you ignore the signs, multiply or divide them as if they were positive. And then if both signs are the same, the sign of the result or the quotient or product is positive. So if you're multiplying two negatives or dividing two negatives, the answer is positive. And we already know if you multiply or divide two positives, the answer is positive. However, if the signs are different, the sign of the result is negative. So if you're multiplying a positive and a negative in either order, the result is negative. And if you're dividing a positive by a negative or a negative by a positive, the result is going to be negative. So let's do a couple of examples. So negative 1.4 times 3. Okay, so we want to multiply 1.4 times 3. Okay. And 14 times 3 is 42. And since there's one decimal point after one digit after the decimal point, we're going to move the decimal over 1. So we have 4.2. So we just multiplied them as if they were positive. Now looking at the signs, one's positive and one's negative, so the answer is negative. Looking at the next one, we'll start by considering 1.4 times 0.3. So 14 times 3 is 42. So it's the same product we have to start with as we did in the last example. Now here there's a digit after the decimal in both of the factors, so we have to move over 2. So we have 0.42. And now we'll determine the sign. Well, we had a positive times a negative, so our result is negative. Okay? And notice that this is a multiplication problem, and maybe that seems easy because we're in the multiplying and dividing section. But this can be a little tricky for students, and I completely understand why. It almost looks like 1.4 minus 0.3. Okay, but notice this is the sign. This is a negative sign, not a minus, and the reason we know that is because it's in parentheses. If we wanted to write minus 0.3, we would write 1.4 minus 0.3. We could put this in parentheses, and it would still be subtraction. Okay, so what makes this a negative sign versus a subtraction sign is that it's in the parentheses. Finally, here we're going to look at multiplying the absolute values, 0.14 times 0.3. Well, 14 times 3 is 42. And in this case, we have 1, 2, 3 digits in total after decimal points. So we're going to move it 1, 2, 3. And we have 0.042. And now since both of the factors were negative, a negative times a negative is positive. So this is our final answer. Now let's look at the division. So first we're going to divide as if they're both positive. So 24 divided by 8, well, we know that's 3. Since one factor is positive and one is negative, since these aren't factors because we're using division, so the dividend is positive, the divisor is negative. So one of these is negative, which means the quotient is negative. Negative 2.4 divided by negative 0.8. So we're going to look at 2.4 divided by 0.8. So these are the absolute values. Well, 24 divided by 8, we know that's 3. And now this has one digit after the decimal. This also has one digit after the decimal. So the difference is 0. So this result is 3. Okay, we don't have to move the decimal at all because it has the same number of decimal numbers after the decimal point in the divisor and the dividend. Now since both of these were negative, a negative divided by a negative is positive, so 3 is our final answer. And finally, what you've been waiting for is decimals and fractions. So remember, another way to think about a fraction is that it's division. So we could write a division problem in this form. This is equivalent to negative 0.24 divided by 0.8. Okay? So this is one way to rewrite this expression. Okay? So don't panic when you see this. So let's start by looking at the absolute values. Well, 24, so I'm ignoring the decimals. 24 divided by 8 we know is 3. Let's change pen colors. This has 2 decimals, 2 digits after the decimal point. This has 1 digit, so we're going to need to move 1 digit to the left. So here's the decimal now. I'm going to move it 1 to the left. So I have 0.3. So that's the quotient for this division problem. Since our original had a negative divided by a positive, that means our result is negative.